In the heart of a dense forest, where the whispers of the ancient trees melded with the secrets of the night, my buddy Jake and I set up camp under the eerie glow of a crescent moon. Our laughter and the crackling fire were the only defiance against the encroaching silence of the wilderness. We were seasoned campers, yet unaware that this night would etch a scar upon my soul, a night when the boundary between folklore and reality horrifyingly blurred. The chill of the late hours crept into our bones, and as the fire dwindled to embers, the unsettling stillness of the woods seemed to thicken. It was then that the peculiarities began, a subtle, inexplicable unease that whispered through the trees. The forest, alive with nocturnal symphonies, fell disturbingly silent, as if suffocated by an unseen presence. Peering into the darkness, we first mistook the soft, rhythmic thud for our own heartbeats, a sound that grew ominously clearer, closer. It was the sound of something large, its gait unnaturally silent for its size, moving with a predator's grace. Our jests and bravado evaporated into the cold night air, replaced by a visceral fear that clenched our spines. Without warning, the darkness manifested our nightmare, a grotesque, humanoid figure, its proportions nightmarishly distorted, emerged into the dim light of our dying fire. Its skin was an ashen tapestry of horror, stretched grotesquely over its emaciated frame, and its eyes, devoid of any human warmth, were pools of black malice that seemed to devour the light. Frozen in terror, we could only watch as it moved with a predator's confidence, its intentions written in the malevolent twist of its mouth, a mouth too large, filled with razor-sharp teeth, gleaming with insatiable hunger. It was a creature of nightmares, a cannibalistic abomination whispered about in the darkest of folklore tales, never believed to be real until its breath was hot upon your skin. Jake reacted first, his survival instincts igniting a desperate courage. He lunged towards our backpack, grasping for the flare gun we'd never imagined using in defense. But the creature was swift, its movements a blur of terror. It descended upon him with a savage ferocity, its shrieks a symphony of nightmares as it tore through the fabric of our reality and flesh alike. I was paralyzed, a statue of horror, as the monster, this perversion of nature, consumed my friend with a primal, grotesque relish. The sounds of his desperate cries and the creature's ravenous feeding are etched into my memory, a haunting melody of death and depravity. By some grace of fate or mere shock, my legs found their strength, propelling me into the black embrace of the forest. I ran, guided by primal terror, the creature's guttural howls echoing as a relentless promise of death. Branches lashed at me, roots conspired to trip me, yet fear lent me a supernatural agility. When the first rays of dawn finally pierced the forest canopy, they found me huddled against a tree, miles from our desecrated campsite, my body and mind scarred by the night's atrocities. I was alone, the sole witness to a horror that defied explanation, a survivor of an encounter with a creature that belonged to the darkest of folklore nightmares, now terrifyingly real. The authorities found nothing but the remnants of our camp and blood-soaked soil. No trace of Jake, no evidence of the creature, just the haunted ramblings of a man who'd stared into the abyss and been forever altered by its gaze. They say I'm lucky to be alive, but each night as shadows dance and the wind whispers, I know that death would have been a merciful fate compared to the memories I now keep. For I have seen the unthinkable, survived the encounter, and am condemned to remember that true horror lurks not in the stories we tell, but in the unseen, waiting in the silent darkness of the woods.
Under the veil of a starlit sky, the summer sleepaway camp nestled beside Silver Lake was a haven for laughter, whispered secrets, and youthful spirits. Yet, as I lay in my bunk that fateful night, the air was thick with an unspoken dread, a shift in the camp's heartbeat that pulsed beneath the surface of nighttime serenades and crackling campfires. The day had been sweltering, the kind of heat that promised a storm brewing on the horizon. As night fell, the camp was alive with the usual cacophony of giggles and distant songs, but an oppressive unease settled over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the surrounding woods harbored eyes filled with a hunger no earthly creature possessed. The camp counselors had always delighted in spicing our nights with ghost stories, tales of spectral figures that wandered the woods, their souls as restless as the rustling leaves. But that night, the stories seemed to seep out of fiction and into our reality, the boundaries blurred by the whispering winds and the rustling trees that seemed to conspire with the darkness. As the night deepened, a stifling silence enveloped our cabin. The once comforting whispers of nature turned eerily quiet, as if the forest itself held its breath. Then, it began, a soft, haunting melody, drifting across the lake, a lullaby of sorrow and loss. It was mesmerizing, ethereal, and with each note, a bone-deep cold seeped into the cabin, frosting over my sense of comfort and filling me with an icy dread. Compelled by a force I couldn't understand, I found myself drawn to the window, peering out into the moonlit night. There, by the water's edge, was a figure, ethereal and glowing faintly in the moonlight. Her presence was both mesmerizing and terrifying, a specter from the whispered tales, her eyes hollow pools reflecting the torment of her eternal wandering. The air grew colder, my breath visible in the moonlit cabin, as she began to glide over the water's surface, her movements graceful yet filled with an unspeakable sadness. The haunting melody grew louder, a symphony of whispers that seemed to echo the deepest sorrows of the earth. Panic clawed at my chest, a primal urge to scream, to run, to escape the spectral vision before me. But I was frozen, spellbound by her sorrowful procession. She was searching for something, someone, her ghostly lament a plea for release from her eternal bondage. As she drew closer, the temperature dropped further, the world outside the window frosting over, her despair manifest in the icy tendrils that crept across the glass. My heart raced, terror and fascination colliding within me as her gaze met mine, a silent beckoning that threatened to pull me into the depths of her anguish. Then, as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished, the melody dissipating into the night, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. The chill receded, but the imprint of her presence lingered, a haunting reminder of the thin veil between our world and the realm of spirits tormented by their unresolved pasts. Morning broke with the chirping of birds and the golden hues of dawn, but the light did nothing to dispel the shadows of the night. The camp awoke, oblivious to the nocturnal visitation, the world moving forward, unperturbed, as if the specter of the night was merely a figment of my imagination. But the haunting melody lingered in my mind, a chilling lullaby that echoed in the silent moments, a reminder of the night when the veil was lifted, and I gazed into the sorrowful eyes of a lost soul, forever wandering the shores of Silver Lake, trapped in a limbo of her own making.
In the secluded heart of the Appalachian Mountains, the old family cabin awaited us, shrouded in the dense fog of forgotten tales and hidden truths. My grandparents, long past, had left behind this relic, a gateway to the ancestral secrets they had fiercely guarded. Driven by a mixture of reverence and curiosity, I brought my girlfriend, Emily, to unearth the past, unaware that we were stepping into a nightmare etched into my bloodline. The cabin, ensconced in an eerie silence, held the whispers of a story untold, its creaking timbers and shadow corners pregnant with secrets. As dusk fell, a sense of foreboding crept over us, the surrounding woods alive with a sinister watchfulness. Our first night was restless, the oppressive darkness a heavy cloak, smothering the warmth we tried to kindle. Our search through the dusty remnants of generations uncovered a chilling truth, hidden within the brittle pages of my grandfather's journal. The words, scrawled with a trembling hand, spoke of my uncle, a figure shrouded in macabre tales and whispered fears. Born disfigured and wild, he was the family's dark secret, a living specter of primal desires and unspeakable appetites. They kept him isolated, hidden from the world, but his savage nature could not be tamed by love or chains. His existence became a local legend, a monstrous shadow prowling the Appalachian wilderness, his humanity eroded by solitude and an insatiable hunger for flesh. My grandparents, bound by guilt and despair, fed his gruesome cravings, hoping to quell his predatory urges, but their deaths left him untethered, a beast roaming the unyielding mountains. The realization hit us like a cold wave. The cabin was not abandoned. Somewhere, in the dense thicket that cloaked the mountain, he lurked, watching, waiting. Our presence had awakened something primal, a dormant hunger, a hunter's instinct honed through decades of isolation and savagery. The night brought terror to life. Emily's scream shattered the silence, her figure ensnared in the monstrous grip of a man, or what once might have been one. His eyes, wild with a feral gleam, bore into mine, a mirror to the barbarity etched into his soul. I was paralyzed, witnessing a horror that transcended fear, a living nightmare sculpted by the cruel hands of nature and fate. In the ensuing chaos, I fled, driven by primal terror, the sounds of struggle echoing through the trees, a haunting symphony of my darkest fears realized. When I dared to look back, the cabin was a beacon of horror, its windows aglow with a sinister light, Emily's shadow etched against the curtain, a silent testament to her fate. I stumbled through the wilderness, the night alive with the whispers of trees and the distant howl of my uncle, the embodiment